Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a case study that literally transforms a dream destination wedding into an absolute nightmare. We're heading into the misty, rain-soaked mountains of Cherrapunji. What was supposed to be this beautiful celebration of love, it devolved into something entirely sinister. If you're fascinated by folklore or just love dissecting how psychological dread bleeds into physical reality, you are definitely going to want to stick around to see how this sequence of events unfolds.
Okay, let's dive into this. I will not leave you alive. Just imagine that for a second. You're on a bus ride, heading to your own wedding. You're trying to just chill out, listening to music through your earphones. Then out of nowhere, the music cuts out. And that exact phrase is whispered directly into your ear by this terrifying, completely unearthly voice. Well, that was the actual chilling reality for a bride named Sanvi. This right here, this is the exact moment where the dread truly sets in. It shifts from just, an eerie vibe to a direct, inescapable threat.
To really grasp the gravity of this haunting, we gotta understand what was at stake. So, Sanvi and her fiancé, Advat, had been together for 4 years. Deeply in love, incredibly pumped to finally tie the knot. They picked June for a destination wedding in Cherrapunji, which, if you don't know, is famous for these breathtakingly heavy, beautiful monsoon rains. It was supposed to be the event of a lifetime, right? A perfect union set against this lush, super romantic backdrop, totally surrounded by friends and family. But, well, that idyllic setting was actually about to become their trap.
Now let's map out exactly how quickly things escalated on their bus journey from Guwahati. First, Sanvi spots a veiled woman sitting way in the back of the bus. And every time Sanvi looks back, this woman is muttering incantations with just the most terrifying smile. Fast forward to hour 1 of the trip. Sanvi wakes up at a rest stop, and this woman is right beside her, showing a face that is horrifyingly half-cut. By hour 3, we get that ghostly whisper in the earphones we just talked about. It makes Sanvi scream, the driver loses control, and the bus crashes right into a tree. Then, by hour 5, they're waiting outside in the pouring rain for their resort transport. Sanvi sees the woman again, but now she's dressed in a full bridal outfit. The apparition's neck suddenly snaps completely backward, and she literally throws herself off a steep mountain cliff. I mean, it's just this rapid, breathless succession of pure terror.
And this brilliantly illustrates probably the most isolating aspect of this whole haunting, the psychological divide between the couple. On one side, you have Sanvi experiencing sheer visceral horror. She's seeing a half-cut face, hearing death threats, watching a ghost hurl itself off a cliff. But on the other side, we have Advait. Because Advait never actually sees the entity himself, he just logically rationalizes the whole thing away. To him, the bus crash was just a mundane accident, and Sanvi's visions, he figures they're just hallucinations brought on by extreme wedding stress and the gloomy weather. So Sanvi is just entirely alone in her terror.
What's really fascinating here from a folklore perspective is how this entity operates. You see, this wasn't random. It was a highly targeted disruption of an auspicious event. In cultural terms, this is known as an apashagun, basically a severe bad omen that signals impending tragedy. And as we get closer and closer to the actual wedding, the haunting shifts gears. It moves from psychological dread and visual scares to direct physical attacks on the cultural rituals themselves.
Which brings us right to the ruined Mandi ceremony. Normally, this is a super joyful pre-wedding ritual. Sanvi's getting her henna applied when suddenly her hands start to burn, like intensely burn. Deep, angry red wounds start forming right underneath the henna paste. She tries to yank her hands away, but the artist refuses to let go, just gripping her with this terrifying superhuman strength. And when Sanvi finally looks up, the artist is revealed to be that exact same ghostly woman from the bus. Naturally, Sanvi completely faints in sheer terror. But, and this is the wild part, when she wakes up, Advait fatally writes the whole shebang off as just a severe allergic reaction to the Mandi paste. The warning signs are literally flashing red, but his logic just keeps blinding him to the supernatural reality.
Let's move to and see how this builds to the final fatal event on the wedding day itself. The setting here is intensely claustrophobic. The mandap, the wedding altar, is set up inside a banquet hall with these massive windows facing the pouring Cherrapunji monsoon rain. All of a sudden, the power completely fails. The entire hall is engulfed in pitch darkness, lit only by the flickering sacred fire of the Havan Kund. Now, this fire is deeply important. It's meant to bear witness to the vows and protect the couple. So having it be the one and only source of light in this massive darkened hall, it drastically raises the stakes. It's incredibly moody, incredibly tense, and honestly, the perfect stage for the climax of our explainer.
The chaos erupts
almost instantly. First, like we said, the hall is plunged into darkness. Then, right there in the dim firelight, Sanvi looks over and sees the ghost. She's wearing a blood-red bridal outfit, and she is sitting right beside Advait, holding his hand. Before anyone can even process what's happening, the large glass windows of the banquet hall begin to shatter, just one by one by one. The wind and rain are howling into the room. And finally, the ghost fully materializes with that horrific, wounded face, grabs Advait by the neck, and brutally, violently snaps it right in front of the entire terrified family.
It is just a devastating, abrupt end. Advait is killed instantly. His breath just stops right there at the altar. But the horror definitely doesn't end with him. In the midst of all the screams and the shattered glass everywhere, the ghost actually lunges at Sanvi, grabbing her by the throat. With terrifying force, the entity drags the bride out through the broken window, pulling her out into the stormy, pitch-black valley below.
So, how could such a joyous occasion turn into a complete massacre? Well, the answer actually lies in the dark history of the land itself. In the aftermath of the attack, a local village elder reveals this chilling piece of lore. He tells the grieving family, years ago, a bride was pushed off this very slope by her husband on her wedding day. The vengeful spirit of that murdered bride, she never left, and her singular, malicious purpose is to make absolutely sure that no one else can ever celebrate a wedding on the mountain that claimed her life.
Let's break down the anatomy of this curse, because it explains exactly why Sanvi and Advait were targeted in the first place. Think of it like a puzzle. Actually, scratch that, it's more like a trap. First, the location. This was a brand new resort, built directly on top of that cursed, tragic mountain slope. Next, the trigger. This happened to be the very first wedding ever attempted at this newly constructed resort. Because the place was so new, the resort owners were completely in the dark about the local folklore. And finally, the consequence. The murdered bride's spirit eliminates the couple to enforce her eternal ban on weddings. Basically, Sanvi and Advait were simply the tragic victims of a geography they just didn't understand.
So the crucial point is understanding the ultimate symbol of what was actually destroyed here. Before we reveal the final outcome, let's look at the Mangol Sutra. This is a sacred necklace tied by the groom around the bride's neck during a Hindu wedding ceremony. It's the ultimate symbol of a lifelong, protective, and loving marriage. It represents a bond that is supposed to transcend time itself. Keep this specific, deeply sacred item in mind as we look at our final piece of evidence.
2 agonizing weeks later, the search parties finally discover Sanvi. Her lifeless body is found deep in the forest at the absolute bottom of the mountain. But the morbidly ironic detail here, the truly horrifying twist of this entire haunting, is how she was found. She had been strangled to death by her own Mangol Sutra. The cursed bride literally took the very symbol of lifelong love and twisted it into a murder weapon. It's just this incredibly chilling subversion of everything the wedding was actually supposed to stand for.
We started with a beautiful couple traveling through the rain, and we end with a curse fulfilled. I think it really shows us how terrifying it can be when logic causes us to ignore our deepest, most desperate instincts. It leaves us with a lingering, super unsettling question. When the pain of the past demands revenge, and the ground itself is cursed, can anyone truly escape? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning what lies beneath the surface.